Hi, good morning, everyone. So, nearly 300,000 autistic Australians are waiting, some for up to 2 years, for a diagnosis that cost families between $1,500 and $6,000. The stakes couldn't be higher, where early intervention in those first crucial years can transform a child's developmental trajectory. Yet families are stuck in endless queues while these precious windows close. BlinkLab is now changing that story. Their groundbreaking eye tracking technology is transforming autism assessment, slashing wait times, and dramatically reducing costs. Today, Henk-Jan Boele, CEO of BlinkLab, is here again to share with us their exciting results from their first large-scale US pilot studies and to discuss their path towards FDA approval in the coming months. So, welcome, Henk-Jan. How are you going?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Welcome back. So, look, to recap, for those who are actually new to BlinkLab, can you please give us a quick overview of what your company does and the problem that you're really solving in the early neurological diagnosis space?
Yeah, of course. So BlinkLab is building a technology, a smartphone-based platform to basically run neurological assessments in
Mhm.
children. So what we do, we use the phone's the camera, the microphone, and we measure, of course, as you were mentioning, eye movements, but we also look at other facial reflexes. We
Mhm.
also measure vocal responses that are triggered by visual cues or auditory cues that we play. So essentially, we're kind of tickling or poking the brain, the same as a neurologist would do with a reflex hammer. We use the smartphone as a reflex hammer, and the reflexes that we evoke obviously are way more subtle.
Mhm.
Um, so as you were mentioning, right now, autism diagnosis is often very late and incredibly time consuming. So we're talking about many hours of specialist assessments, months, even years of waiting lists, limited access to clinicians. And we are changing that by turning basically validated neuroscience-based tests into accessible digital tools for family, not only in Australia and Europe, but also, I mean, anywhere.
Thank you.
And actually, yeah, I mean, I want to finish this with mentioning that the idea actually started when I was doing my postdoc at Princeton. And it kind of began as a pretty wild concept, but turned out to be remarkably effective. And I really believe that it's about time that neuroscience is going to make a way into real clinical practice. And I think that's exactly what we're doing at BlinkLab, bringing lab quality neuroassessments to
Mhm.
patients and society.
Thank you. And look, I guess I want to break that down into layman's terms. So we're talking about normal, traditional clinical path of assessment for children with potential autism that could take months and the queue is long. And if they got access to BlinkLab, the app, quick or what is the lead time to that diagnosis?
Yeah, so our goal is to go from, let's say, months to years to weeks. So the
Wow.
BlinkLab results are immediate. So you do the assessment, and then the data is going to the doctor immediately.
Okay.
It's not going to the parent themselves. It goes to the doctor immediately, like real time. And this way, we want to really empower doctors to diagnose autism quicker and more faster and more reliably.
Thank you. That's a very seismic tool. And now, look, you've just announced the results from your 485 participant in the US pilot study. Can you walk us through the key findings and what really stood out to you the most?
Well, the key finding, the key takeaway, I think, is that the technology works.
Mhm.
It detects autism. And what's also important to mention here is that many of the families, the kids that participated in the study, they
Mhm.
really enjoyed doing the BlinkLab assessment, which was really important for us as well.
Mhm.
So the study had two main goals. The first one was to get our operational side pixel perfect. So we wanted to make sure that the clinicians, the families, the kids, that they all understood the testing procedures. Keep in mind that over 90% of the data was collected at home. And that was a great test for the technology in a real world use. And some things are pretty obvious, right? I mean, um, you have to instruct the parents how to do the test. We learned, for instance, that you should not do a snack or eat a snack while taking a test. I mean, these things happen in a home environment. So you really have to instruct the families because it messes up facial reflex responses. So that's one
Right.
thing, the operational thing. The second thing, which is maybe even more important, is to make sure that the results from the earlier studies that we did, the exploratory studies in Morocco, would hold up in a true FDA style environment. Because compared to the previous studies in Morocco, which basically focused mainly on more profound autistic kids, the US population included a much broader population. Really mild cases of autism, mixed conditions like co-occurring conditions like ADHD, speech delay, developmental delay, you name it. So it's basically the toughest possible sample for the technology. And still, we achieved over 84% overall accuracy.
Yes.
And when you basically exclude the uncertain cases, so the cases where the clinician isn't very certain, where the diagnostic instruments like ADOS or CARS or SRS are very low. If you exclude those cases, which were not that many, then the specificity rises to close to 90%. So that tells us that the technology works not only in a perfect lab setting or let's say a perfect sample where you have autism versus no autism, but also in an everyday clinical reality. And I think that's exactly what the clinicians want to see, but also what the regulators, the FDA wants to see, and where we can make a really, really true difference.
Thank you. And now I want to dive more into the results. So you said your study achieved 83.7% sensitivity and 84.7 specificity. So how do these numbers actually compare now to the FDA's benchmark for clearance? Because I know that what you have at the moment is actually the gold standard. So can you tell us what the FDA is expecting and what's the word? And like, how do you feel about these results?
Yeah. So the day before we unblinded the data that was collected by our CRO, by IQVIA, we spoke with the FDA. So we had our formal pre-submission meeting with the FDA. And during the meeting, the FDA confirmed that 65%, well, larger than 65% level for sensitivity and specificity is sufficient for clearance. And this is based on the performance of predicate devices. So our results right now, 83, 84%, are well beyond what's required. And I believe that that's a very strong position heading into that pivotal 510K study.
Excellent. And now, look, you spoke about it earlier. You actually deliberately sought out to do the pilot study on challenging circumstances. So, I guess, why did you do that, and how does that really represent now translate into the technology for BlinkLab?
So why we did it? Because the FDA study will also be challenging. It will not be a perfect sample where there's like very clear-cut autistic cases and cases that are clearly not autistic. There will be a gray zone of kids that are maybe autistic, maybe not. The doctor is maybe a little uncertain. So there will be many maybes in that study. So, and that's also why we did that for the pilot study, to basically include that, well, include kids that cover the whole broad spectrum of the developmental concerns.
You've mentioned that the ceiling for diagnostic accuracy in autism is around 85 to 90%. Can you explain why even expert clinicians don't reach 100% and how BlinkLab actually matches that level?
Yeah, it comes down to how autism is diagnosed nowadays. So the ground truth for autism is not like a lab result. It's not like you have, let's say, a medical test available, a blood test, a brain scan that diagnoses autism with 100% certainty. Unfortunately, that test does not exist yet. So it's based on the clinician's judgment. And the clinician judgment isn't perfect. I mean, first of all, clinicians, they don't always agree. So that is called expert consensus. Expert consensus is close to, well, it's 70, 80%. It, of course, depends a little bit from the severity of the child and also the age of the child. And then the other thing is that the autism diagnosis itself is not stable over the years. So it means that a child that is diagnosed at the age of, let's say, 4, doesn't necessarily meet all the autism criteria when the child is 8, and as a result, it can lose the autism diagnosis. So I think this is really important to understand this concept that autism is defined behaviorally and not biologically. There is no blood test, as I was saying. So two specialists evaluating the same child, they reach consensus about 80% of the time. And there's also long-term follow-up studies showing that 10-20% of the kids that gain a diagnosis or lose a diagnosis.
Thank
So
you.
when our model, oh yeah, sorry, when
Mm.
our model, what was I going to say? Or when the model achieves like, let's say 85%, that's not a technical limitation, I would argue. It's more a reflection of the underlying variability in the diagnostic standard itself. And we are kind of essentially performing at that level of the human expert. I think that's the benchmark that really matters.
And help me understand now, this is more for my personal curiosity. So, when you were doing the pilot study on the 485 children, and does that mean that there was also like human studies on the right hand side? So obviously they were stress testing your technology at BlinkLab,
Mhm.
and then you had a set of clinicians actually then making the true assessment on the other side to see if they were mirroring each other's results.
Correct. So that was the study design indeed. So there was like a diagnostic assessment for autism done by a clinician.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, there was the BlinkLab assessment. And at the end of the road, we compared the two results.
Thank you.
Some of the cases were recently diagnosed. So we also
Mhm.
included cases that recently underwent a diagnostic evaluation. And then we included them in the study as well. But basically, it's always comparing the clinician's judgment, which is the ground truth,
Mhm.
with the BlinkLab assessment.
Sounds like an extremely onerous and time-consuming process.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'm really grateful that I'm working with, I mean, first of all, Primate and North Shore, they did great work, but also the team here. I
Mhm.
mean, we were crunching so much data. I mean, it was a lot of work. Absolutely.
And also for our viewers, the company that you use, they're independent, right?
Yes, we are working with an independent CRO
Hmm.
that is was conducting the study, and also we will be working with the same CRO for the 510K study.
So basically, even though you were working with them, you were talking about unblinding the studies and the results. You actually didn't even realize what the results came in at until they actually unveiled it.
That's correct. So the data that was collected by the CRO, we were blinded until the day after we spoke with the FDA.
Thank you. Now, look, I want to come back to this again. Like, BlinkLab's results, you exceeded the FDA requirements. Does that de-risk the upcoming pivotal 510 case study? And how does it actually impact your timeline towards US regulatory clearance?
De-risking, yes, definitely. That's why we ran the study in the first place, right?
Hmm.
To de-risk the pivotal study from a technical, but also from an operational perspective, and of course also from an investor perspective.
Hmm.
Um, we have now validated that the technology works in the real world setting. We have fine-tuned the procedures, like the recruitment, all the at-home testing. So from an investor's standpoint, it means less risk, faster execution as well, because we learned a lot about how to optimize recruitment.
Hmm.
And also we as a company, but also the investors, I think, have way more clearer visibility on the true FDA timeline. So we started early last year with, no, we started, when did we start? Mid last year with onboarding the sites
Hmm.
for the FDA study. And basically, we are anticipating that working with these 10 sites, we only have announced 7 or 8. We realistically need about 7 to 8 months of recruitment.
Thank you. Now talk to me about your competitors, because I'm aware that you have two major competitors, and what has their accuracy been? And I have been informed that they have already, in fact, received FDA approval.
Yep, yep. There's two competitors. They both received clearance from the FDA.
Hmm.
The first one was Cognova, and
Hmm.
they did a de novo study with the FDA, and at the total sample level, so if you include all the cases, they achieved have to 52% sensitivity, and I believe it was 19% specificity. Um, they also did a subgroup analysis where they looked at 1/3 of the cases. And in that sample, of course, the performance was way better. But at a total level, it was not that high. They are using smartphones, but they are not using smartphones the way that we use the smartphones. We use the smartphone basically as a neurological device. They are using smartphones to record a video of your child playing at home. And then there is a remote doctor and an AI algorithm looking at that video. The other competitor, Early Tech, they are more based in neuroscience.
Okay.
They look at eye movements, but they are not using smartphones, but they use like the specialized cameras that I was also using back in the days when I was still with Princeton doing my research. So it requires specialized lab equipment. Their sensitivity specificity is better. It's more close to 70-80%. But I believe that's also because they are working with, well, better validated eye tracking algorithms than Cognova is doing. So right now in the current study, we are outperforming both of them. But of course, I have to say that was not the FDA study, that was the pre-FDA study.
Okay. So based on these two sets of information, I'm assuming you're quietly confident moving into that next phase.
We can't wait. Yes.
Look, you're now onboarding top-tier US hospitals for the pivotal trial. Can you share more about who's involved and what and how those strengthens like your study's credibility?
So who's involved? So I have to be careful here because I don't want to mention names that we haven't announced yet, but there
Okay.
will at least be Penn Medicine, Cincinnati, Southwest. There is the Vanderbilt Kennedy Center, Seattle Children's Hospital, University of Nebraska.
Mhm.
I'm forgetting one. There's one other. University, Missouri is also University of Missouri, Nebraska.
Mhm.
So we are now also working with other centers. So we will be announcing other sites soon. And why are we working with these centers?
Mhm.
Well, first of all, it's all top tier centers. And that's for several reasons. We talk about credibility and market adoption post FDA clearance. That's why we work with these sites. We want to get buy-in from leading clinicians, from key opinion leaders in the field.
Mhm.
Um, we cannot, and it's basically part of our go-to-market strategy, right? We cannot sell them an FDA-approved technology yet, but we can already start building the sales infrastructure so that
Mhm.
after FDA approval, we can enroll the technology ASAP. So that's why we only work with the best of the best, right? It's basically going. It's part of our go-to-market strategy where we start with researchers and then we go to the specialist, the autism
Mhm.
specialist, and from the autism specialist we go to primary care. We are not skipping steps, but we are kind of building trust. And as a medical doctor, I know how challenging clinical adoption can be, right? It's really difficult, hard for new technology to earn a place in the real healthcare system. So we're not cutting corners, but we're earning a lot of trust, and that's why we work with these centers.
Excellent. Now, look, I'm going to ask you potentially, the word is not tricky, but I do have an important question. Look, from a commercial standpoint, once FDA clearance is achieved, like, firstly, how quickly do you think BlinkLab could be rolled out as a diagnostic aid in clinics and your GP networks? And given the thing here is you've already got two competitors that are already in the market that have already received FDA approval, and they perhaps have first mover advantage. Like, how are we going to combat that?
Mhm. Um, So how fast? Well, pretty fast actually. So the goal is that the first US clinics can go live within weeks after clearance. So our initial focus is the US. In the US is New Jersey, New York State, and Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because these are markets that have a very strong autism awareness and a great clinical infrastructure in place already. Um, so right now we are working with a consultancy group at Princeton, where we basically work out our health economic model, but also our go-to-market strategy with a very detailed roadmap of how we will be rolling out BlinkLab in these states. For the GP network, as I was mentioning, it will take a little bit longer because we don't want to skip let it go straight from, let's say, approval to the GP. You want adoption, understanding, credibility first from the specialist, and then you go to the GPs. That's kind of how medical technology evolves.
Mm-hmm.
So we're working on, well, all the groundwork is what we are currently doing, right? From reimbursement models to EHR, electronic health record integration, extremely important, all these steps. Um, I also want to mention that we are learning a lot from our current collaboration with Mental Care Group in the Netherlands. That's not related to autism, but more towards ADHD. But
Mm-hmm.
this is a large mental health care provider in Europe. They have over 150 clinics. We already have a commercial deal in place with them. And they have already integrated the platform in the whole workflow. And once we have regulatory approval, we basically want to switch the button from, let's say, study to, let's say, a product. Because right now, our product is not influencing the diagnostic process, but then after adoption, after approval, it will be. So it's all about building that infrastructure. So where does it fit in best? So from an investor perspective, we are looking at a really fast post-clearance adoption. And we have a very clear roadmap towards that scale.
Towards commercialization, basically.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And my next question that was around, first mover advantage and how
Oh, yeah.
we can combat that.
I mean, I know that Cognoa is already, they have reimbursement in place in some states. So that's great. So that means that it is reimbursable, which is great. Our product is, well, the performance right now is better than our competitors. So I truly believe that I mean, generally speaking, like medical technology, I mean, like digital technology and mental health care are kind of, it's still very early days. So I'm glad that we are not the first mover.
Okay.
They are kind of doing the groundwork, and we can definitely benefit from that as BlinkLab, with introducing a technology that works better. And knowing that there's already healthcare providers, healthcare insurance companies that are willing to reimburse. So that's extremely important.
Thank you. Now, look, I want to talk about beyond autism. You're also running studies in the ADHD and dementia space. Like, how do these additional programs expand BlinkLab's long-term market opportunity? Because I'm thinking it's not just, in the next 6 months, potentially. What are we looking at over the next 18 months to 2 years?
So autism, of course, is a big market, but as you probably know, ADHD is way larger. I think it's 4 or 5 times larger. So that's a massive opportunity for BlinkLab, because essentially we're using the same technology. It's the same app, same technology, but the use case is different. So from a commercial perspective, that's huge, but also from a clinical perspective, it's important because autism and ADHD have many overlapping symptoms. So as you know, we're also running studies on adult diagnosis of autism together with University of Amsterdam. We are doing of course, the dementia studies, early detection of Alzheimer's and frontotemporal dementia, because we know that these are diseases where early neurological markers could really change the game.
Yeah.
Well, I think in your report you did a really good job. But as you basically
Not
you
my
noticed that we
report.
have well, you have planted well, we have planted many seeds in the last few years, with many universities and many use cases, not only autism, but also ADHD, but also the other use cases like the dementias. And I think in the coming year, 2026 will be very exciting because we will kind of start harvesting some fruits there.
Sure. I mean, talk to me about the market opportunity in the US, because obviously, you're an Australian-based company, also in Amsterdam, but your primary market at the moment is actually in the US. Like, how big is it? Are we really talking about? Let's just stay with autism at the moment.
Yeah. So right now, between 2 to 4% of the kids is diagnosed with autism. And when you talk about developmental concern and evaluations for developmental concern, developmental delays, I think it's 1 out of 6 kids that is now evaluated. So that's a huge market. And the same is true in Europe. When you talk about a tool, a technology that at some point is able to screen these kids early during development, you're talking about millions of kids, right? I believe it's 3.6 million kids that are born each year in the US, and the same number roughly in Europe. So these are enormous markets, and parents are concerned about a child's behavior, about a child's development. Sorry. So that's, I mean, it's a technology that really wants to bring a difference, to make a difference.
Look, BlinkLab's technology turns a smartphone accessibility into like neuroscience tool. I mean, how scalable is that model, especially in terms of cost and access for families, and also now the healthcare system?
Well, honestly, I think it's hard to imagine a more scalable tool. Everyone right now owns a device that we're using. Everyone owns a smartphone. So that's enormous. Then what's also important to mention is that we are standing on the shoulders of let's say, neuroscientific giants, right? We are not inventing new neuroscience. We are basically taking principles from neuroscience and applying them, basically putting them into a smartphone and making them available. So we're addressing, I think, one of the biggest challenges in mental health care today, mental health, brain health. And our focus right now, of course, is children with autism, but the same platform can also expand into adults for diagnosis,
Mhm.
ADHD and beyond. So it's really bringing that lab-grade neuroscience into the real world, making it accessible, we validate it, we make it scalable. And I think that's the future of mental health diagnostics.
And I guess it's just more of a statement from myself. I'm seeing BlinkLab democratizing access, right? Historically,
Correct.
you needed to have
Yes.
not only the resources, but you also needed to have the mindfulness to actually be aware that this technology was available. So I think it's tremendous. I want to now segue into the commercial aspect of BlinkLab. It's been quite a thrilling ride watching your share price go through its growth. Can you expand a little bit more about the growth? Because we also have you projected at $2.38. And how do you feel about that?
Well, there's a lot of excitement, obviously.
Hmm.
But I mean, we are still very early in the journey, right? We only just started.
Hmm.
I think since our last conversation in February this
Yes.
year, the share
Yes.
price doubled from 40 to 80 cents. And our shareholder base is growing globally, not only in Australia, but also in Europe and US,
Hmm.
Asia as well.
Hmm.
So that's fantastic. And of course, what's next, right? I mean, we will be announcing new FDA sites in the coming weeks, actually. We will be releasing the results for the ADHD study early 2026. We will be completing the autism study, the pivotal 510(k) study next year. The focus in the report in the East Coast report was clearly on the US market, but we also are working on CE MDR approval. So we want regulatory clearance in Europe as well. So that means that we have integration with Mental Care Group, so we can go live with them. And of course, we have the results, as I was mentioning before, for the the adult autism study and the Alzheimer's studies.
Sure. And talking about timeframes, like so in 2026, it's a big year for you because you're going to go towards FDA clearance. Uh, with the studies, what sort of timeframes are we talking about? Like, when do you think we will be able to get those results?
Yeah, so as I was mentioning before, based on the conversations that we are having with the hospitals that will be part of the study, we are anticipating an enrollment period of, let's say, 8 months.
Okay.
So once we start, so we will start probably early in the year. So let's say Jan, maybe Feb, and then we have 8 months to complete the enrollment. Hopefully we can do it quicker, but everybody knows that clinical trials, they're always delayed. So I try to be realistic. It's really difficult, but I think 8 months is a good benchmark. Yep,
So we're talking late 2026.
correct.
Thank you. And now, look, finally, your share price has doubled since February, right? So, what key messages do you want to tell investors, particularly now that we've talked about your initial pilot study? Like for those who are who are sitting on the sidelines, thinking that most of the growth has already occurred, they may have missed the boat. What's the path ahead for BlinkLab for the next 12 months, and why do we still, they should still consider to be part of your journey right now?
Well, as I told you, right, we only just started. We haven't even started the FDA regulatory trial. So Brian, the chairman, would say we are not in the game, right? You're in the game once you've started the trial.
Mm-hmm.
So that's of course one opportunity, pediatric autism detection. Then all the other opportunities, the excitement here is very high. I mean, I'm surrounded by a fantastic team of very smart developers, data scientists. It's a great pleasure to work with them. And I mean, when we look at how we work as a team, I mean, we just started. Um, and our goal is to really build tools that are going to drive change in mental health care. So that's why we're looking forward to 2026, because there will be many very exciting news announcements, not only on autism, but also on other studies that we're currently doing that are all basically taking place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, huge clinical impact, not only for autism, but also, of course, huge commercial potential. And I think that's the combination that's kind of rare, right? You have the science, the commercial impact. So I think that makes us rare, and also what makes BlinkLab special.
Thank you. Henk-Jan, I guess I'll see you in probably 11 months to 12 months time.
Let's make it 8 months.
Thank you. See you
Thank
soon.
you. See you soon.